Hello there people, this is Bruce Pickle or nintenbruce here, back again with another deck recipe, but this time for the new September 2013 format. Now I have released a Deck Angels Plus version of this deck in conjunction with this, so you guys get to choose which deck in which format you wanted to play in. Simple as really. The rules are the same between both though, so I'm going to be explaining a lot of things which are very, very similar with the other deck. So yeah, there you go. What can you expect? It's two different variants of the same deck. Anyway, moving on, Vayu Turbo. For those of you that don't know what Vayu Turbo does, it's all about Vayu syncing, that's what I call it anyway, monsters onto the field as soon as possible and just overwhelming your opponent, usually in one fell swoop, or putting the opponent in a very bad way. So, as per usual, I'll be going through the monsters, then the spells, then the traps, and we will go from there. So, starting off, actually let's use the mouse, one Armaggedon Knight. I only use one of these. I can't use 2 or 3 because it's a weak enough card, although its effect is quite nice in the way that you just summon it and there you go, you can bung a dark monster from your deck into the graveyard. You can't do too much with it afterwards, so I only run one of these. One Blackluster Soldier. So this is going into a very, very light version of a Twilight deck, or rather mixture of dark and lights, but BLS, as long as you've got some lights in the deck, you can usually splash this in no problem. More often than not, you're probably going to mill it, but if you do end up drawing it, you are going to have a graveyard to be able to bring it out straight away. So yes, definitely run one of these beauties. One Blackwing Elphen Raven. For those of you that know already, I love throwing a twist on Vayu, well, in any deck really, and not a lot of Vayu Turbo decks play Elphen the Raven. Its effect, when you normal summon it, you can change the battle position of a monster on your opponent's side of the field. And the other effect, which is, which you're going to be using more often than not, is that if there's a Blackwing monster on the field already, you could just normal summon it without a tribute. Now, with that, running 2 or 3 of these is way too many, so just run one of them. And also afterwards, Elphen then can be bunged into the graveyard and then synced up for Blackwing Armor Master, or Vayu synced for Blackwing Armor Master anyway. But we'll get onto that a bit later. One Blackwing Gale the Whirlwind, because you have to. It's an awesome card. Cut the opponent's monster's attack in half, and if you get to protect it for another turn, you can do it again. And it's a tuner, you can special summon it out with certain other cards as well. Speaking of, there is one Blackwing, oh sorry, 3 Blackwing Shuras. Wow, I'm using the opposite of double vision, crazy. Anyway, 3 Blackwing Shura the Blue Flames. Now, although there's not many Blackwing monsters you can aim for in this deck, it's all about him being a beat stick and the fact that you can get Vayu out as soon as possible, or even Gale if you really wanted to. But yeah, Shura, for those of you that don't know, destroy an opponent's monster by battle, special summon out a Blackwing monster from your deck with 1500 attack or less. So you're going to be looking at Gale or Vayu, primarily Vayu. But yeah, that's all you can aim for. The plus side as well is it negates the effects. Not a plus side for Gale for obvious reason, but you get to negate Vayu's effects so you can actually sync on field and go into Catastor or any other 5-star that you see fit. Moving on, 3 Sirocco the Dawns, you just have to. More often than not, you're going to be normal summoning this without a tribute, and yeah, it's a 2000 beat stick. And also in this format, I find that there's a lot of Blackwing decks out there. So more often than not, your opponent is going to be swarming the field, gets to your turn, you normal summon this, absorb the attack of all Blackwing monsters on the field, and go for one big attack. So I find in this format that besides the Vayu syncing, Sirocco has a lot of other uses, which is just beautiful. Remember though, you can only normal summon it without a tribute if you've got no monsters on your side of the field and your opponent has at least one monster on their side of the field. But yeah, beauty of a card. Now the main star, 3 Vayu Emblem of Honours. Again, I touched on that you can't sync with him while he's face up on the field unless his effect is negated. He's one of the very few weird tuner monsters that work like that. But when it's in the graveyard, you can remove this and one other Blackwing monster whose level stars a total one of these lovely Blackwing Synchros here. A little thing here, even though, in fact I'll save him for later. Yeah, don't worry, little surprise people for those that don't know anyway.
one Zephyros the Elite. Now if he's milled into the graveyard, then this is actually a really easy special summon. And thing is, you can even bung certain monsters back into the hand that you feel that you would like to use again. It's a bit of a weird card, but for this deck, the 400 life point damage you take for activating its effect is brilliant. You can't really run more than one of this because you can only use his effect of special summoning from the graveyard once per turn, or sorry, once per duel, my mistake there. So yes, only run one of him, but he's a nice little surprise, and then you can easily either exceed summon if you've taken control of your opponent's monster, or if you've normal summoned a different monster. Yeah, many uses for this. Speaking of which, I'll skip over this guy for a second. Dark Grepher is quite nice with him. Its effect is it can be special summoned out by certain means. I'll tell you in a sec, but what you can do is special summon this to the field, then send this back to the hand to special summon this from the graveyard, and then normal summon him or special summon him again. Yeah, multiple plays with Zephyros. Beautiful. Anyway, moving on then. So one Dark Arm Dragon, he needs no explaining. There's a lot of graveyard control in here, and you're going to be bringing them out more often than not. 3 Dark Grephers. So that special summoning I was talking about is if you discard a level 5 dark monster or higher from your hand to the graveyard, you can special summon him to the field. Simple as that. But also he's got another lovely little ability where you can discard a dark monster and get rid of a dark monster from the deck to the graveyard in conjunction with that. So more often than not, if you say got Vayu in your hand, then you can bung that into the graveyard and then choose Sirocco or Elphen and bung that into the grave to then Vayu sync up, or vice versa. You get the picture, but bearing in mind you can also aim for Plaguespreader Zombie here as well. Yeah, it's a beautiful card, and 3 is definitely not too many. 1700 attack isn't anything to be sniffed at either, especially in this format where there's a lot of weak monsters. 1 Effect Veiler. Now, it might not seem like much considering you should usually run 2 Effect Veilers, but the fact that it's an extra light isn't too bad either. It is another tuner, and more often than not, it might well be milled, but I think 1 Veiler is just fine in this deck, and not a lot of people expect it in a Vayu Turbo deck. 2 Plaguespreader Zombies. Not a lot of people play 2 in any given deck apart from in zombie decks for obvious reasons, but I don't see why not in a Vayu Turbo deck. I mean, look at it, you're going to be doing a lot of milling. This is more than likely going to go into the graveyard. All you've got to do is discard a couple of cards to bring both of them out if you really wanted to, and then sync and get Void Ogre Dragon out. With all that discarding or putting back into the deck, you're going to end up with no hand, and you're going to have him on the field. Anyway, I've spoken a bit too much about him before his time, but yeah, 2 Plaguespreader Zombies, definitely not too many at all. Definitely go crazy with them. 3 Rykus, I call them the problem-solving cards. Its effect, for those of you that don't know, you flip it, you destroy any given card on a field, and you mill 3 cards at the same time. So yeah, as they're lights as well, that'll help with BLS. Yeah, you can't go wrong with a good old Ryko. Moving into spells now. 1 Allure of Darkness, that goes without saying really. 1 Burial from a Different Dimension, very nice card. You can't call yourself, or rather you can't say that you're running a Vayu Turbo deck without running this, because this just, lets you Vayu summon again. It's that simple. 1 Dark Hole, 1 Forbidden Lance. So this is different from my usual Decade Duels Plus plays anyway. Its effect, and bearing in mind its quick play as well, is when you use it on a monster, besides the fact they lose 800 attack, it's not affected by spell or trap cards. So say you summon it, someone wants to use either Icarus Attack on you, Torrential Tribute, Mirror Force, etc, you just play that, and sure, your monster loses attack, but it will stay on the field. So I definitely find 1 of those more than enough. 1 Foolish Burial, obviously you're going to want to aim for a monster you can Vayu sync or even bung Plague in there. 1 Mind Control for a really easy sync or exceed into something. 1 Mystical Space Typhoon. 1 Pot of Duality. Now, a lot of decks either don't run these or run, well, all three of them, but I find this gives it a much needed boost really, and sure you can't special summon that turn, but hey, if you draw, say if you've got a Vayu in your hand and with Pot of Duality you then get Icarus Attack, then easy, set Vayu, set the Icarus Attack, and that's it. You know, think on your feet like that, don't think that you have to special summon that turn. Yeah, this definitely is needed in this sort of deck, I find, anyway. Going into traps now, 1 Compulsory, that's a very nice card. 1 deck Devastation Virus currently as well. I've just noticed I haven't been able to pop a second one in there, which I would suggest. But yeah, if you're going to be summoning out Sirocco the Dawn or any other dark monster with over 2000 attack, usually even your Vayu synced monsters, then yeah, more often than not this is going to be fine to use in any given situation. 3 Icarus attacks in this sort of deck, very easy to play. Even if your opponent negates it, yes, you still pay the cost, but usually you've got a Vayu in the graveyard from that. So yeah, 3 Icarus attacks, brilliant, just brilliant. 1 return from a different dimension for definitely a final push when it's your turn. 1 Solemn Warning to stop your opponent being a bit sneaky, and 1 Torrential Tribute. I find Mirror Force a bit slower in this format to use, so Torrential Tribute, at least it's an instant bang, and sure your monsters will go into the graveyard, but again, you can Vayu sync. Remember, you've got a lot of graveyard control that you can be using. Anyway, going into the extra deck now, 1 Ally of Justice Catastor. Feel free to bung in an extra 5-star if you don't like any of these other cards in here, bar the Blackwing monsters. 1 Blackwing Silverwind the Ascendant, I believe it was called. Oh, hold on, my cursor is moving. Silverwind the Ascendant, yes, there you go. Now, what I was talking about earlier on is this usually says it needs to be synchro summoned with a Blackwing tuner monster and 2 or more non-tuner monsters. But if you're Vayu syncing, it's a special kind of summon, so you can get rid of Vayu the Emblem of Honor plus 1 Blackwing Armed Wing. Armor Master, Armed Wing is that guy there, and then yeah, you can still bring this out. Bearing in mind Vayu syncing, you do negate your Blackwing monster's effect, so unfortunately you can't have its awesome effect of destroying 2 face-up monsters. But still, it's a 2800 attacker, very beastly, and I definitely suggest running 1 of these. 2 might be a bit too many, but you know what, it is possible to run with 2 of them, depends on your style of play anyway. Oh, speaking of Vayu syncs, I figure I'll throw in here as well. If you do a Vayu sync, because it's not a proper synchro summon, you can't special summon these guys out afterwards, so you can't use Monster Reborn on it, or, well, not that you can use Monster Reborn on it anyway, but say you go for Call of the Haunted, or say you go for Return from a Different Dimension, you can't use it because they weren't summoned out properly in the first place. Kind of like if someone negated your synchro summon with like Solemn Warning or something like that. That's not classed as a proper summon, so you can't get it out. Remember that. 2 Blackwing Armor Masters. Definitely only run 2 because you're limited on extra deck space here. 3 Blackwing Armwinged. These goes without saying because this is the easiest monster to Vayu sync into. 1 Black Rose Dragon. I find this quite an interesting card. Crimson Blader helped me out in a few pinches anyway, so if you use it or destroy an opponent's monster by battle with it, your opponent cannot normal or special summon level 5 or higher monsters. Now, if you find by the end of round 1 that your opponent doesn't special summon that much anyway, then you might want to side him out for either another Blackwing Armor Master or Maystroke the Symphony Djinn. To be honest with you, this could be taken out for something else. I just find very rarely that 3 Blackwing Armor Masters can be played, but it's not essential, okay? Anyway, moving on. 1 Scrap Dragon, a nice easy card to play, can't go wrong. Bearing in mind you can target your Vayu as the one you destroy and then use it afterwards. Stardust Dragon, very nice card. I've explained a bit about this earlier on. Void Ogre Dragon, so its effect, if you've got no cards in your hand, you can negate a spell or trap card once per turn basically. So very handy, and 3000 attack and 3000 defense is pretty beastly without any drawback, even if you've got cards in your hand. It's a big powerhouse. If someone used the Book of Moon, how are they going to get over 3000 defense? Not very easily, let me tell you. Then into the XYZs, not too many here. 1 Utopia, 1 Photon I can never pronounce this correctly, Papilloperative, Yeah, very handy cards those. And 1 Wind Up Zen mains. I say only 1 because you're not going to be using 3-star Exceeds very often at all. Moving into the side deck now. Changing the style of deck slightly now. So 2 Blackwing Kalutes. Not a lot of people expect that in a Vayu Turbo deck, because they just expect you to sync up as often as possible and just try and finish you instantly. So why not change it up with Kalute and surprise people? 1 Doomsday Horror. It's a nice card, but I find that there's just no room for 2 of them here. But anyway, the attack and events of this card are equal to the number of banished dark monsters times 300. Very, very handy card, especially if opponents got removed from play monsters as well. And when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, return all banished dark monsters to the graveyard. So if you've still got some synchro monsters left here, then you can value sync yet again. Another effect Veiler if you know your opponent's got cheeky effects. 2 Max C's if you know your opponent's going a bit crazy on those special summons. Like I say, this is not a definite, so feel free to change this out for another synchro monster you like, i.e. another Ally of Justice Catastor, or something else that you would like anyway. 1 Maestroke the Symphony Djinn, just in case your opponent's got annoying face-up monster effects. For whatever reason, if you can't get around Catastor or something similar. You can get around Catastor here because you run a ton of dark monsters, but you get the point. 1 Book of Moon, 1 MST, Bottomless. If your opponent is Spell and Trap heavy, then Delta Crow Anti-Reverse is very welcome in here, especially since the ban of Heavy Storm. 1 Mirror Force and 2 Trap Stuns, just in case your opponent is trap heavy and it gets in the way of you finishing your opponent off. Very, very handy cards. So, that is the Vayu Turbo deck for the current format. What do you guys think? I think this is quite a nice deck. Very different to the usual Vayu Turbo deck, even though the general goal is the same. But yeah, I find it a lot of fun to play, and that's what it's all about. So guys, pop your comments in the section below. Let me know your thoughts. You know, what do you guys think of the deck? Have a play with it and see if there's anything you can suggest. I remember one person asking in the previous video that I used this deck with, actually. Why don't I use the other Blackwing monster, the 5-star one, Gren I think it is. It's because Gren has to be synchro summoned properly, it cannot be Vayu synced. And on top of that, the effect isn't amazing anyway, in all honesty. Like, even if I was running a full-on Blackwing deck, I'd be a bit hesitant about playing that. So yeah, remember, you cannot use this like a normal Blackwing deck. It's all about just special summoning as much as possible and just going ballistic with it. So, until next time guys, you take care, and I will see you again soon.